When she first said it, I honestly thought she was joking. We were sitting in the living room, wine glasses on the coffee table, wedding planning binder open between us. That's when she leaned back and casually dropped the bomb. "I've decided," she said, swirling her glass. "I'm keeping my ex's last name after we marry. It just sounds better than yours." I blinked, waiting for the punchline, but there wasn't one. She just sipped her wine, completely unfazed, like she'd just announced what color napkins she wanted at the reception. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. "Right," I said quietly. "If that's what you want." On the outside, I played it cool. On the inside, it felt like someone had carved out a piece of me and left the hollow space echoing. She didn't even notice. She kept rambling about invitations, photographers, and floral arrangements, completely oblivious to the silence stretching between us. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me. My mind kept replaying the moment, her tone, her smirk, the dismissive way she'd said my name wasn't good enough. That was the moment something shifted. The next day, while she was at work, I drove back to the boutique, where we'd bought her wedding dress. It was an $8,000 designer gown, one she'd cried tears of joy over when she first tried it on. The store owner recognized me immediately. "I need to return this," I said flatly. Her eyes widened, but she didn't ask questions. A few signatures later, the dress was gone. The money went straight back into my account. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. From there, I opened my laptop and booked a flight, not for two, but for one. Somewhere warm, somewhere far, a place where I could breathe without the weight of her expectations pressing down on me. By the time she came home that evening, I'd already set the stage. I'd emptied half the closet, left my suits and casual clothes neatly folded in duffel bags by the door, near side of the closet, perfectly untouched, except for one glaring absence: the dress. When she woke up the next morning, still half asleep, she padded over to the closet like always. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard her gasp. The sound was sharp, like glass shattering on tile. "Where is it?" she yelled, voice shaking. I didn't answer right away. Let her stew, let her feel the emptiness she'd so casually carved into me the night before. Then I walked in, coffee mug in hand, and simply said, "You wanted his name? You don't get my future. Scarlett, or maybe I should start calling her. My ex." Stood frozen in front of the closet. Her hands hovered in the empty space where the white garment bag used to hang. She looked like someone who just had the wind knocked out of them. You didn't," she whispered, her voice trembling. I leaned against the doorway, sipping my coffee slowly. "I did," returned it. "Got every penny back." Her face flushed red, a mix of shock and fury. "That was my dress." "You had no right." I raised an eyebrow. "No right? You mean like how you had no respect when you told me my name wasn't good enough for you? You wanted to keep your exes instead. Remember." Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, she didn't have a clever comeback. She just stood there, caught between pride and panic. "This isn't funny," she snapped finally, her voice pitching higher. "We're supposed to be getting married in 6 weeks. You realize what you've done?" I set the mug down on the dresser and crossed my arms. Yeah, I saved myself from a lifetime of being second place in my own marriage. Tears started brimming in her eyes, though I couldn't tell if they were from heartbreak or the realization that her perfect wedding plan was unraveling. I didn't mean it like that. I was just joking, teasing. "You know how I am." I shook my head slowly. "No, Scarlett, that wasn't a joke. You said it because you meant it. Because somewhere deep down, you think his name, his memory is still worth more than me?" She stepped closer, reaching for my arm, but I pulled back. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this. We can fix it. I'll call the boutique. I'll get another dress. No one has to know." I cut her off with a short laugh. "Oh, people will know. They always do. Besides, there won't be another dress." I canceled the florist, too, and the caterer, and the venue deposit. Her knees buckled slightly, and she grabbed the edge of the dresser to steady herself. The mask of control she always wore had slipped completely, and for the first time she looked small, vulnerable. "You're serious," she said hoarsely. "Dead serious," I replied. The silence that followed stretched heavy between us, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. She wiped her face with trembling hands, smearing last night's mascara across her cheeks. Finally, she asked, almost in a whisper, "So, what now?" I walked to the nightstand, picked up the travel itinerary I'd printed, and placed it gently on the bed beside her. The bold letters at the top read, "One passenger, international flight." "What now?" I repeated. "Now, I go live my life." "And you," I gestured toward the empty closet, "you figure out how to fill the space you just created." Her lips quivered, but no words came. For the first time since I'd known her, Scarlett had nothing left to say. The hours that followed were a blur of chaosers, not mine. Scarlett paced the apartment like a caged animal, alternating between tears, yelling, and desperate apologies. I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, completely detached. At first, she tried sweet-talking me. Can laugh about this one day, can't we? People fight before weddings all the time. Her voice was syrupy, forced, but her eyes betrayed panic. When that didn't work, she shifted tactics. "You're being dramatic. It was just a name. You're really going to throw away everything we've built over that?" I set my phone down and finally met her gaze. "You didn't just reject my name, Scarlett. You rejected me. And you laughed about it like it was nothing. That's not a slip of the tongue. That's who you are." Her lip trembled. She sank to the edge of the bed, clutching a pillow to her chest like it might anchor her. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. But even then, I could tell she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the image of her perfect wedding, her carefully curated social media story, her chance to flaunt the designer dress and the dream ring. That's what she was really mourning. The call started soon after. First her maid of honor, then her mother, then her sister. Scarlett's voice was shrill as she tried to explain, but her words kept tangling. I caught fragments. "He's overreacting. It was a misunderstanding. Of course I love him." But the tone of the responses on the other end told me even they weren't buying it. At one point, she shoved the phone into my hand. "Please, just tell them we're fine. Please." I placed it gently back on the nightstand without saying a word. Silence, I realized, was more powerful than anything I could have said. By evening, the apartment was littered with crumpled tissues and half-packed suitcases. Scarlett had tried to reclaim some control by frantically gathering her things, but every time she reached for a box, she froze, paralyzed by the reality of what was happening. She cornered me in the kitchen as I was rinsing out my coffee mug. "You're not really leaving, are you? You're just trying to scare me." Her voice cracked on the last word. I looked at her, really looked at her, this woman I'd once imagined spending forever with. All I felt was a hollow kind of clarity. "I don't need to scare you, Scarlett. I just need to stop letting you diminish me." Her face crumpled, but I didn't flinch. The distance between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical, tangible, a chasm she couldn't bridge no matter how hard she reached. That night, while she cried herself to sleep, I quietly zipped my suitcase and placed my passport on top. For the first time in months, I felt weightless. Tomorrow, I thought, I start living again. The next morning, I woke before the sun. Scarlett was still curled up in bed, her makeup smudged across the pillow from last night's crying. For a moment, I just stood there watching her. There was a time when that sight would have softened me, not anymore. I grabbed my suitcase, wheeled it quietly to the door, and paused only long enough to slip the house key onto the counter. It made a small metallic clink, final, definitive. That was the sound of me closing this chapter. The ride to the airport felt surreal. City streets blurred past, but all I could focus on was the weight lifting from my shoulders. Each mile between me and that apartment felt like oxygen filling my lungs again. By the time I boarded the plane, Scarlett had already left me half a dozen missed calls. I ignored them. When the flight attendant asked if I wanted champagne, I nodded. Why not? This was the beginning of something new. The plane took off, and I stared out the window as the ground shrank beneath me. My phone buzzed against. "Now, we can fix this. Please don't go. I was stupid. I'll change." Her desperation crackled through the screen, but it barely registered. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one scrambling to save us. I wasn't the one bending. I wasn't the one begging. Landing on the other side of the world felt like stepping into an entirely different life. The air was warm, salty with the sea, Palm trees swayed lazily against a cloudless sky. I checked into my hotel, tossed my suitcase onto the bed, and opened the balcony doors wide. Freedom had a sound it was the waves crashing against the shore. The laughter of strangers on the boardwalk, the click of my camera shutter as I captured it all. I realized then I hadn't been living. I'd been existing in someone else's shadow. That night, I sat alone at a seaside restaurant, sipping wine, watching the horizon bleed into shades of gold and violet. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something. I smiled. Yes, I said simply. Myself. Back at the hotel, I opened my phone again. Scarlett's messages had turned frantic. I'll take your name. I'll do anything. Please come home then. Final one. If you love me, don't do this. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking it, because that was the truth, wasn't it? I did love her, but I loved myself more. That was something I should have realized a long time ago. As I drifted off to sleep with the sound of the ocean outside my window, I knew. Tomorrow, and every day after, belonged to me. By the third day of my trip, Scarlett's tone had shifted completely. Her texts weren't just desperate anymore. They were public. She'd started posting cryptic messages on social media song lyrics about heartbreak. Filtered selfies with captions like "People change and you don't know what you've lost until it's gone." Friends began reaching out to me. What happened? They asked. Scarlett's a mess. Some were sympathetic, others nosy, but I didn't answer. I wasn't going to narrate my pain for their entertainment. I had already lived it. Instead, I rented a scooter and spent the day exploring winding coastal roads, stopping at beaches where no one knew my name. The sun burned my shoulders, salt water cooled my skin, and every mile I traveled was another step further from the man I used to be, the man who tolerated being diminished. Meanwhile, Scarlett was unraveling. I knew because she started calling my sister, then my mom, pleading her case. He's overreacting, she told them. It was just a misunderstanding, but my family knew better. They'd seen the cracks long before I admitted to them. When my mother called me, she didn't repeat Scarlett's words. She just said softly, "I'm proud of you. You finally chose yourself." That affirmation meant more than anything Scarlett could have said. On the fourth night, I got a message from Scarlett's maid of honor, Claire. "She's falling apart," Claire wrote. "She keeps saying she ruined everything. Are you sure there's no chance?" I typed a single response. She is right. She did ruin it. Then I put my phone down and ordered another drink. The next morning, I woke to photos circulating online. Scarlett had been spotted out with her friends, mascara streaks still visible under nightclub lights, clinging to anyone who'd listen. The comments were brutal. People weren't sympathizing, they were calling her out. Didn't she say she was keeping her ex's last name? One person wrote, "Wow, no wonder he left. For once I wasn't the one being humiliated." She was, but here's the thing, I didn't feel vindicated. Not really. Watching her spiral didn't bring me joy. It just confirmed something I'd already known. She wasn't the partner I needed. She wasn't the partner I deserved. That night, as the waves crashed against the shore outside my hotel, I journaled for the first time in years. I wrote about the boy who grew into a man always trying to prove himself. The man who mistook tolerance for love, and the man I was becoming now. A man who would never again accept being treated as second best. Scarlett's voice echoed faintly in my head, her laugh, the way she'd dismissed my name like it was disposable. But as I closed the notebook, I realized something. Her voice didn't carry the same weight anymore. It was fading. I knew I was finally free. By the time my trip was halfway over, Scarlett's messages had gone quiet. At first I thought maybe she'd finally moved on, but silence, I've learned, is rarely peace. It's usually the calm before one last storm. That storm hit the night before I flew home. Was packing my bag when my phone lit up with a string of calls. Different numbers. Unknowns. Finally, a voicemail came through. Her voice. "I made a mistake, please. I'll take your name. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't throw this away. Don't throw us away." I stood there listening, suitcase half sipped. For a brief moment, a flicker of the old me, one who always tried to fix everything, stirred. But then I looked around my hotel room. The open balcony, the scent of salt air, the itinerary I had built for myself, and I remembered why I left. When I landed back home, Scarlett was waiting outside baggage claim, hair messy, eyes red, still clinging to the image of something already gone. She rushed toward me, tears brimming. "Please," she whispered, grabbing at my hand. "Let's start over. I'll change. I'll make it right." I gently pulled my hand back. "Scarlett, you don't need to change for me. You need to face who you really are. And I need to live with someone who values me, not as a placeholder, not as a backup plan, but as her first choice." Her face crumpled. "So that's it? After everything?" I nodded. "That's it." The drive home felt lighter than the flight had. My apartment was quiet, empty, but it was mine. No staged wedding plans, no constant comparisons, no shadows of exes looming in my future. Just me, my suitcase, and the start of a clean slate. Over the next weeks, I threw myself into work. Reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I'd abandoned years ago. Scarlett kept trying for a while, emails, letters, even showing up at my door once, but eventually, even she had to accept reality. She wasn't the one walking away this time. I was. And in that, there was power. Not cruelty. Not revenge. Just clarity. The funny thing is, people always assume heartbreak ends with bitterness or vengeance. But standing on my balcony weeks later, watching the city lights flicker like stars, I didn't feel bitter at all. I felt grateful. Because Scarlett gave me the greatest gift without even realizing it. The push I needed to reclaim myself. And as for her, well, she once said my name wasn't good enough. Turns out it was too good for her all along. If you've made it this far, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.